All right, y'all, welcome to the show. I am jam-packed today. So there's a couple things that are happening that are big news that we're not going to get to today. We'll probably get to them a little bit later on in the week, namely because these are huge events and it requires a shitload of reading and researching in order to give an informed opinion on it. But we have the Bangladeshi government has just been overthrown. We have the stock market is plunging pretty fast. I believe it started in Japan and South Korea, and now the U.S. is tumbling as well. Again, it requires a hell of a lot more research and reading to give firm, solid opinions on this. But of course, the speculation at this point is this has to do something with crypto. Potentially interest rates are involved, or where interest rates will go are involved. Of course, the potential for war in the Middle East could also be spooking the markets. So again, there's a lot going on today, but we have Iran is threatening war. This is the most serious it's looked in a very long time. It's probably going to be a bigger response than the previous one. So we'll talk about that. Israel, in the midst of sparking this wider regional war, also decided to bomb 2 schools with more than 30 children in it. And BIBI'S cabinet, according to some reports, is actually revolting. Even those right-wing freaks are going, you know what? I think you're a little bit too far right and a little too extreme. Then we'll get to Trump is now repeatedly losing it because of the polls coming out with Kamala Harris ahead. J.D. Vance was told to his face that he's a weak candidate. That's a fun clip to watch him try to do some jujitsu out of that one right there. Conservatives are absolutely losing their shit over a female boxer at the Olympics. They think this female boxer is trans. She is 100% not. We don't have many crystal clear facts on this story, but one of them that we do have is that this is not a trans person. But nonetheless, facts never gotten their way before. And then later on, of course, we have the new weird story about RFK. There seems to be one coming out every other week. Kyle Rittenhouse denounces MAGA and then gets shit on and then reverses immediately. And more than that. All right, guys, so do me a big favor. Everybody, please subscribe below. That helps out massively. It costs you absolutely nothing. And let's go ahead and dive into it. So let's start with this. As you all know, Israel has been on an assassination spree going after leaders of Hezbollah, leaders of Hamas. By the way, it wasn't the military wing of Hamas they went after. It was the political wing of Hamas they went after. So in other words, some of the people who were directly engaged in the ceasefire negotiations were offed by Israel, which is yet again indicator number 7,312. Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. They never wanted a ceasefire. And I don't know how much more clear they can make it if they assassinate a guy who's trying to get a ceasefire on the other side. That's quite a sign that they're not interested in peace. So anyway, all that's going on. Now remember, they struck in Beirut, Lebanon to get a Hezbollah leader. They struck in Tehran, Iran to get the Hamas leader. And both of these things are wildly illegal and massive, massive provocations. So at the same time all that's going on, it's not like they've, pressed the pause button on the genocide in Gaza. And we have a new story for you. Can you believe, in the midst of everything I just described, they also bombed schools that were operating as shelter for women and children? All right, here we go.
At least 30 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks on 2 schools. This was the scene shortly after those attacks as first responders rushed to save the injured.
Jesus Christ. I just want to note real quick, you don't see these images and you don't see these videos in Western media. You just don't see them. We're watching an Al Jazeera clip, and now you can see what the reality is like on the ground for Palestinians. And ask yourself, why don't we see this in Western media? It's journalistic malpractice to not show this when you're covering this issue. And by the way, they barely cover this issue anymore anyway.
These schools were sheltering hundreds of displaced people. Gaza's civilian defense says 80% of the dead and wounded are children, and many are alive but trapped under the rubble. The Israeli military claims it targeted Hamas fighters. Hani Mahmoud has the latest from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza.
We're still receiving horrific reports from inside the only remaining health facilities at the center of Gaza. That's Al Ahli Baptist Hospital. It's already overcrowded. Many of the injuries from the past attack, but today particular attack has caused further civilian casualties and great deal of destruction. The arrivals to the hospital right now, they're arriving with severe burns and severe bleedings, and the hospital doesn't have sufficient enough medical staff or the medical supplies needed for medical treatment and medical care. These attacks took place within the past couple hours on 2 schools. These schools are back to back, a privately owned educational facility and a public school. They are at the vicinity of each other. An educational complex were targeted. These 2 schools were housing thousands of people. These are the hundreds of displaced families inside these schools. They're coming from different parts of the northern part of Gaza Strip and Gaza City, and more recently from the neighborhoods at the eastern part. That's the Shijaiya and the Tufah neighborhood, due to the recurrent incursions of these areas that push people into further internal enforced displacement.
So in other words, they go, hey, you guys got to go in these designated areas, and that's where you'll be safe. And then these women and children go in those areas, and then they bomb those areas. And of course, their get out of jail free card is to just say the word Hamas. All you have to do is say the word Hamas, and they think, bro, we can do whatever we want. We see this for what it is.
Now is the fact that the rescue missions will come to an end as the nighttime crawls in. We're approaching the end of the day. It will be very difficult to do this because the skies of Gaza and the Gaza City and the northern part will be clouded with the attack drones and sky predators and surveillance drones. Those are chasing and attacking and shooting at any moving objects, let alone people trying to save lives from under the rubble. There are many people who are still under the rubble. So far, what we have confirmed, a number of the death toll is 30 people, and almost double the number of the critically injured who are risking their life inside the hospital because of the severe bleeding and the severe burns, without the sufficient medical staff or the sufficient medical supplies or the enough medical supplies to help them. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from the central area of Gaza Strip, Palestine.
So at least 30 Palestinians killed, at least 60 injured, and they say 80% of the killed are children. They bombed 2 schools that were being used as shelters. And remember, this is at the exact moment that the entire world is looking at Israel going, hey, could you please stop assassinating people and begging for an all-out war with Hezbollah and Iran? Please, maybe. And at the same time, Israel is pretending to the world like, bro, we're the adults and we're showing restraint. They're also murking more civilians in schools. I mean, again, I'm at a loss for words here, man. I'm at a loss for words. How long has this been going on now? And according to Euromed Monitor, we have, about 50,000 dead civilians. According to The Lancet, the medical journal, they say that number is probably as high as 186,000 when you include the direct war deaths and what they call the indirect war deaths. And again, we're supposed to look at this like, if Iran strikes back at Israel or Hezbollah strikes back at Israel, they want us to look at this like, bro, where'd that come from? I don't understand. What's going on here? It's beyond preposterous. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's continue. This is really interesting. President Biden, take this with the biggest grain of salt in the world, because this is like the 18th story that we've gotten to this effect. President Biden privately demanded in a tough call Thursday that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stop escalating tensions in the region and move immediately toward a Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. U.S. officials told me this guy's whole job, Barak Ravid, his whole job is to make Biden sound like, bro, he's being really tough on Netanyahu, which is why he hasn't been able to reel him in even 0.1%. He continues, at the end of the meeting with Netanyahu last week, Biden became emotional, raised his voice, and told Netanyahu he needs to reach a hostage deal ASAP per Israeli officials. Biden raised his voice and said he wants a deal reached within a week or 2 weeks per an Israeli official. This is hilarious at this point. It's both deeply tragic and hilarious. Hey, Joe Biden, if this was true, literally all you have to do is tell Netanyahu, that's it. We're cutting you off. No more money, no more weapons. You're on your own. If Iran retaliates against you or Hezbollah retaliates against you, good luck to you, son. We're gonzies. That's literally all he has to do. And this would be over like that. You guys know the stories. When Israel was attacking Lebanon, Ronald Reagan made one phone call to the Israeli prime minister and said, this looks like a Holocaust. You're done here. And then 20 minutes later, he said, okay, yeah, I guess we're done here. That's all you have to do. Even George H.W. Bush conditioned billions of dollars of loan guarantees to Israel if they froze illegal settlement buildings. And you know what they did? They froze illegal settlement building. This is not fucking rocket science. If Joe Biden wanted them to stop, he could make them stop right now. And I haven't even mentioned, forget just cutting off the money and the weapons, I haven't even mentioned actually siding with the overwhelming majority of nations at the UN and not using our veto to protect Israel and sanctioning top Israeli officials. But he just, I'm really upset with you, sir. You better stop, even though I've allegedly told you to stop 78 other times and you've spit in my eye. This is a joke, and people expect us to believe this, okay? Now, this is also very interesting. Now, I'm curious what you guys think about this. Do you think this is basically a lie from the Israeli government to cover for everybody not named Benjamin Netanyahu? Or is this true, right? Because this also could be in the same category as the stories of Biden being very concerned. Listen to this. A very difficult meeting took place yesterday between the heads of the Israeli security services, IDF, Mossad, and Shin Bet, and PM Netanyahu over the hostages. It ended with the PM slamming the table, Prime Minister slamming the table, and calling them weak. Here are the quotes as reported by Israeli Channel 12. Let me zoom in a little bit, Ski, here. Ronan Bar, head of the Shin Bet, quote, "It seems like the Prime Minister does not want the framework on the table. If that is so, tell us." In other words, you don't want a peace deal. You don't want a ceasefire. If that's the case, just say that. Okay, continue. Nitzan Allen, IDF head negotiator, quote, "You know that the parameters you added will not be accepted and there will be no deal. With what you are telling us, there is nowhere to go. We are at zero." In other words, hey, Netanyahu, the things that you're asking for in a supposed ceasefire deal are absurd. They will never be agreed to, and you know that. Dedi Barnea, the head of Mossad, there is a deal. If we wait, we may miss the opportunity. We need to take it. So allegedly the head of Mossad is like, for the love of God, let's get the remaining hostages back. What are we doing here? Netanyahu slammed the table and said, quote, "You are weak. You don't know how to negotiate. You are putting words in my mouth. Instead of pushing the prime minister, go push Sinwar," the head of Hamas. A source at the meeting told Channel 12, Netanyahu doesn't want a deal at this point. He keeps insisting, even though we have made it clear that the system can deal with the fallout of reaching an agreement. Reports are now circulating that either Bar or Barnea will soon come out and talk openly about Netanyahu torpedoing a deal. There will be an earthquake. Now, to this point, as of the recording of this video, that has not happened yet, which again makes me wonder, is this one of those fake stories to try to make everybody else not named Netanyahu look better, or is it real? Well, look, I guess we'll find out. But I love how, they're surprised at this super late day. Hey, it turns out Netanyahu doesn't want peace. Oh, you don't say. The guy who's spent months and months bombing hospitals and schools and UN buildings and murking civilians walking alone on a dirt road who are unarmed and keeps assassinating people in Hezbollah and the political wing of Hamas. Oh, you don't say. That guy doesn't want peace. The guy who's currently starving 2.3 million people, he doesn't want peace. The guy who's doing a total siege of Gaza, no food, no fuel, no water, no electricity. The guy who says, hey, go to these safe zones, and then they bomb the safe zones. That guy doesn't want peace? Really? That's unbelievable. This is crazy, man. All right, then we get this. The IDF says it killed Hamas's economy minister in an airstrike in the Gaza Strip yesterday. So, again, another great sign that, they're interested in the deal, right? Is when you just keep assassinating people. All right, and then we got this. So this is an Israeli minister, Bezalel Smotrich. We should let Gaza starve, but we can't. Quote, it may be justified. It may be justified to cause 2 million people to starve to death, but we are not allowed to do that because of the international constraints. This is according to the Times of Israel. So he makes it seem like, bro, this international community is getting in the way of our genocide and our Holocaust, bro. What the fuck, bro? That's his point. Well, guess what? They ain't getting that much in the way. They ain't getting, because you guys are barely allowing in any food, fuel, or water, period. Right? At this point, I don't even know how much is getting in, but I guarantee you it's only sufficient for what? 20% of the population at most? But the fact that they just say this shit out loud, right? And it happens all the time. You guys have seen the TikTok videos. They will literally, IDF soldiers will literally destroy a civilian neighborhood, and then you see them like joking around and putting on the lingerie of Palestinian women. They are broadcasting it for the world to see. We have, page after page, a book the size of a novel of genocidal quotes from top Israeli government officials and top military officials. We'll end on this one. This is from Al Jazeera. Iran refuses pleas to water down strike on Israel. Officials have said that they will deliver 2 messages to Jordan's foreign minister when he arrives in Iran today. The first is a message to the U.S., and the second is a separate message to Jordan's leaders. It's believed their intention is to strike Israel much harder than they did in April. The attack they did in April was a total virtue signal to try to make it look like, hey, we're not weak and we're going to retaliate if you come after us. But it really was more of a warning than anything else, irrespective of whether this leads to an escalation in regional war. So Jordan tried to de-escalate the situation, and Iran was like, what the fuck would you have us do, bro? What would you have us do? They've repeatedly violated our territorial sovereignty and killed people in our country. They've repeatedly gone after Hezbollah. And of course, there's still a genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. What are we supposed to do? Sit back and let them, every other week come and assassinate a new political leader? And we're supposed to sit there and smile? At this point, any other country, the U.S., if it was one of our allies, look, they have a right to defend themselves, right? That's what they would say. If Iran was any other country, if Iran was a U.S. ally and the same set of facts were there, the U.S. would say, look, they have a right to defend themselves. They've been attacked. Their territorial sovereignty. By the way, there's some in Israel who are now taking credit for, remember when the helicopter crashed of Raisi, the former president of Iran, and everybody thought it was probably an accident? There are some Israeli officials, I believe he was a journalist to be fair, so this isn't like confirmed at the government level, but there was an Israeli journalist who was on Twitter basically saying, who do you think took down that helicopter, bitch? And again, you're going to whine and cry and yelp and moan if there's a response from this country that you've been the aggressor towards? Unbelievable, man. So, look, that is one of the theories as to why the market is currently tanking, right? Is that because Lockheed Market stock went straight up and a lot of other stocks are going straight down, which could be an indication that we know something's cooking. We know something bad is going to happen. There's also reporting that Shin Bet, one of the Israeli intelligence agencies, they have brought a lot of Israel's government leaders into a secure bunker. In other words, they are waiting for an attack. Now, I will say, I've also seen other reporting that indicated that no, it's a bunch of bark and no bite, but ultimately they're going to try some sort of special forces response. I've heard that. But there's no way of knowing, right? In terms of what public message is being sent out by Iran, it is, it's as extreme as it gets, right? I mean, they're on state TV. They're now airing, video of when they were previously in the Iran-Iraq war. And it's like a real buildup, a real fervor, letting everybody know, oh yeah, we're going to retaliate, we're going to respond. So is that more of a bluff or is that real? We don't know. But I'd venture to say at the very least, they're going to attempt something. Might be some special forces shit and the world would be lucky if that's the case, or it might be an all-out attack on Israel. So, and there's a lot of people fleeing Israel, of course, because it looks like war is imminent. So all of this was avoidable. All of this was avoidable. None of this had to happen if the U.S. would have just reined in Netanyahu and got his ass in line. But no, Netanyahu wants war with Hezbollah and Iran, and by the way, he wants the U.S. to fight it for him. And it's very possible he may get his wish, which would be an absolute disaster beyond imagination. Because if you thought the Iraq war was something, Iran is far, far more powerful than Saddam Hussein's Iraq ever was. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.